the headlines, in the first news conference of her presidency, President Park outlines her policy goals for 2014, promising to inject fresh vitality into the economy and seek new framework of dialogue with North Korea. The South Korean Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se arrives in Washington to coordinate policies in Northeast Asia, where tensions are running high over territorial disputes, rising nationalism, and North Korea's weapons programs. Plus, on the heels of a massive snowstorm, the Midwestern United States braces for a life-threatening cold wave that is forecast to send temperatures plummeting to the lowest in 20 years. With these stories and more, next on Primetime News. Good evening and welcome to Primetime News. It's Monday, January 6th here in Korea. Live from Seoul, I'm Yoo Ji-hae.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thank you so much for joining us. We begin with President Park's New Year's press conference on Monday morning, which not only held significant weight since it was her first since taking office last year, but also because it offered unprecedented openness into the administration's major policy goals.
Joining us now in the studio are Arirang's presidential office correspondent Eoh Jin-joo and Dr. Hwang Joung-wook, professor of law at Hankuk University of Foreign Studies. Welcome to the program. All right, Jin-joo, let's start with you. Give us a rundown of President Park Geun-hye's and the key policy goals for 2014.
Well, revitalizing the economy and laying the foundation for a peaceful reunification will be the key focus of President Park in the year 2014. Now, during the New Year's press conference, which lasted for more than 80 minutes, you got the impression that she really is putting great emphasis on economic revitalization, as the word economy was used the most, 24 times to be exact. Her administration's push for economic revitalization will be based on a 3-year plan, which was unveiled by President Park today.
저는 올해 국민 여러분이 성과를 피부로 느낄 수 있도록 우리 경제의 혁신과 재도약을 위한 경제 혁신 3개년 계획을 세우고 이것을 성공적으로 이끌어서 국민 행복 시대를 열어가겠습니다.
The president pledged to normalize abnormal practices in society and set up the structure for a strong economy, starting with reforms in the public sector and continue her push for a creative economy. She also vowed to create an economy that balances domestic demand and exports by supporting SMEs and fostering the 5 major service industries, the sectors of health, education, tourism, finance, and software.
So, Professor Hwang, can you explain to us the magnitude of what President Park is trying to do? She's trying to implement reforms that many people have said were impossible, and she's also trying to create a paradigm shift in the Korean economy, also something that many people might say is impossible. Are we on the verge of a major change in Korea?
I think, first of all, she set up unrealistic expectations. She said explicitly that her goal is to achieve per capita GDP of $30,000 by the end of her term. If you do the math, Korea's economy will have to grow at 7.2% a year to reach that goal. Korea never really had that kind of high growth, even during the truly high growth years. So I think for whatever reason, her economic team decided to put in highly unrealistic number. On the other hand, I do believe that she actually hit the core issues that do need to be addressed. The 2 things that I do agree completely that Korea needs to change on is the innovation area, and she calls it creative economy, and the other is lack of demand. You know, a lot of people just can't find jobs, and small and medium businesses cannot find customers. On the other hand, if you actually look at a program substantively, will they actually improve innovation? Will they actually spur domestic growth? I just was not convinced.
Well, Jin-joo, President Park also spent a huge amount of time on North Korea and inter-Korean relations. Can you elaborate on what she said?
Yes, with the 2 Koreas having been divided for nearly 70 years now, President Park stressed that now is the time to prepare for a reunified Korea in order to break away from the threats of war and nuclear weapons. She also proposed holding a round of reunions for families separated by the Korean War around the Lunar New Year holiday, which falls in the last week of January.
이번에 설을 맞아 지난 60년을 기다려온 연로하신 이산 가족들이 상봉하도록 해서 마음의 상처가 치유될 수 있도록 해주기를 바랍니다. 북한이 이산가족 상봉으로 첫 단추를 잘 풀어서 남북 관계에 새로운 계기를 만들었으면 합니다.
Now, following the press conference, the South Korean government officially proposed working-level Red Cross talks between the two Koreas at the truce village of Panmunjom this coming Friday.
So, Jin-joo, from President Park's speech, it seems as if reunification is a very concrete objective. What specific steps did she outline to get to the eventual goal of reunification?
Well, Sean, she actually has a three-step plan for a reunified Korea, and we could also say to build trust with the North. Our Han Da-eun looks into the detailed steps of the mission she laid out today.
지금 국민들 중에는 이 통일 비용이 너무 많이 들지 않겠느냐. 그래서 굳이 통일을 할 필요가 있겠는가 하고 생각하는 그런 분들도 계시는 것으로 압니다. 그러나 저는 한마디로 통일은 대박이다. 이렇게 생각을 합니다.
President Park Geun-hye stressing that a reunification of the two Koreas would bring about enormous benefits to the nation, laid out a three-pronged plan to that end on Monday. The first step, she said, is bringing peace to the peninsula. In order to do that, she called on Seoul to maintain tight national security so that citizens can carry on with their daily lives without fear, and urged Pyongyang to abandon its nuclear program.
두 번째로는 그 대북 인도적 지원을 강화를 하고 그거를 통해서 또 남북 주민 간의 동질성 회복도 좀 더 이렇게 이루어질 수 있도록 노력을 하려고 합니다.
President Park also mentioned the need to take good care of North Korean defectors living in the South, as they play an important role in ending the division of the two Koreas. Third, the president said she will work to create a global consensus on the need for a reunified Korea. Saying she had already discussed the matter frankly with the leaders of China and Russia, President Park plans to move forward with such efforts this year. In regards to the seemingly unstable situation in the communist state, President Park said the government will prepare for any and all scenarios, as it's risky to make premature assumptions about the North's internal affairs. President Park also stated that she's willing to hold summit talks with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un at any time, but only when the talks can bring about a substantial outcome in bringing peace to the peninsula. Han Da-eun, Arirang News.
Now, Professor Hwang, many surveys have shown that people rather procrastinate on reunification because of the immense complexity. But what do you think? I mean, do you think under this president we might see some concrete proposals come out, or even an improvement in inter-Korean ties?
I think in general, it's just really hard to strategize with respect to North Korea because one, it's such a ruthless dictatorship that really doesn't listen to democratic reason, and two, it's a black box. Nobody really has good information on it. So I think I'm really sympathetic with President Park on this in the sense that, everybody says that she doesn't have a really good strategy, but I really don't see much alternative. On the other hand, I think she is going the right route in trying to convince South Koreans about benefits of unification because it's going to take a lot of money. And even taxes might have to be raised. Germany still pays so-called solidarity tax 23 years after reunification. On the other hand, think about all the companies, Korean companies that relocated to China, Vietnam. Now you have North Korea just next door with Korean-speaking workers where we can set up factories. I mean, economic benefit, as she said, is a jackpot. On the other hand, we'll need to prepare for that and convince South Koreans that it is something worthwhile to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, Jin-joo, let's move on to domestic issues now.
If I briefly go over some of the topics, President Park denied rumors that there will be a cabinet reshuffle in the near future and refused to give a clear answer on her stance towards the opposition party's demand for an independent council probe into the intelligence agency's alleged meddling in last year's presidential election. The president also addressed the criticism that she hasn't been a good communicator during her first year in office, but many pundits and the opposition party were not satisfied with her response and say it shows that her concept of good communication is very different from that of the general public's.
All right, Jin-joo, Professor Hwang, thank you so much for your insight and time tonight. Meanwhile, up in the north, Pyongyang took aim at President Park Geun-hye's North Korea policy.
The regime says an overhaul is needed if inter-Korean relations are to improve anytime soon. The North state-run Nodong Sinmun newspaper said President Park's emphasis on sticking to her principles was the main stumbling block to bettering cross-border relations as it encourages competition between the two Koreas. Park has made clear that North Korea can't win any concessions by playing up threats or staging provocations against the South, and that any progress in inter-Korean relations will have to be based on mutual trust. As for Seoul's heightened security measures against possible threats from Pyongyang, the newspaper said it was shameful that the South would rest the fate of the two Koreas in the hands of a foreign power, referring to the American military presence on the peninsula. Top foreign policymakers from South Korea and the U.S. will spend a week in coordination talks in Washington.
The agenda is expected to focus primarily on North Korea and historical and territorial tensions in Northeast Asia. Upon his arrival, South Korean Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se said Sunday that he would relay Seoul's position on Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's recent visit to the controversial Yasukuni Shrine, which is the resting place of several Class A war criminals and a symbol of Japan's imperialist past.
It's not a simple matter between the two countries, but a shared interest of the international community. So I plan to deliver South Korea's stance to officials of all ranks that I meet in Washington.
Yoon and U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry are scheduled to meet on Tuesday, where they will coordinate their North Korea policies following the recent execution of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's uncle, Jang Sung-taek. They are also expected to discuss ways to restart the stalled six-party talks on the North's denuclearization. During his visit, Yoon is also scheduled to meet with Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel and Senator Robert Menendez, the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. And on a related note, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe says he wants to meet with the leaders of Korea and China to explain why he visited the controversial Yasukuni War Shrine late last month.
Abe said Monday that dialogue between the three Northeast Asian neighbors is extremely important for the peace and security of the region. He said he also wanted to explain his reasons for wanting to amend Japan's pacifist constitution imposed after the Second World War. But Beijing swiftly rejected the overtures from Tokyo on Monday. The Foreign Ministry spokesperson said Abe's visit to the Yasukuni Shrine disregarded the Chinese people. Seoul has yet to comment on Abe's latest remarks.
Before your day ends and another begins, get the latest news live from Seoul.
Residents whose features
restrictions is on the rise.
closing ceremony.
Expert analysis from Asia's heartbeat.
The legislature circumstances
With a viewpoint only Korea's global network can provide.
the United States. The latest report. Less than a
Unrivaled access from a team always on standby.
Meaning came on the news are trying to cover up the South's true intentions of maintaining confrontation.
The controversial new subsidiary of the state-run rail operator Korail could open as early as this week. The creation of the affiliate is what sparked the nation's longest-ever rail strike last month, with unionized workers accusing Korail and the government of attempting to privatize rail services. But proponents say the move will create badly needed competition for the monopoly. Our Kwon So-hwa has this report.
Korail's new subsidiary is a step closer to launch. The state-run rail operator says the affiliate, which will operate KTX bullet trains departing from Suseol, a station in southern Seoul, is beginning to take shape and may open as early as this week. Korail received a business license from the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport at the end of last month and has set office at its headquarters in Daejeon. 50 employees, mainly from Korail, are expected to be dispatched within this week. The workforce will gradually expand to over 400 people. In an effort to minimize costs, Korail plans to hire externally, except for core employees such as engineers and crew members. Once construction of the railway is completed by the end of next year, the Transport Ministry expects an average of nearly 55,000 travelers a day to use the line in 2016. Korail says that as Suseol will be the second KTX departure station in the capital, the internal competition between it and Seoul Station will generate new demand, improve efficiency, and drive bigger profits.
However, the labor union still believes Korea's move will eventually open the door towards the privatization of the company. Unionized workers filed a lawsuit last week demanding the government withdraw its license for the subsidiary. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
And in a related development, the Supreme Prosecutor's Office on this Monday issued arrest warrants for half of the railway union's top 16 leaders. Authorities plan to indict the remaining 8 without detention over charges of carrying out an illegal strike. The Transport Ministry also announced on Monday evening that the new subsidiary would reduce labor costs by more than 10% and cut aggregate costs by more than 30% through outsourcing. And moving on to the nation's account ledger, Korea's foreign exchange reserves rose to a record high for the 6th straight month in December. The Bank of Korea says foreign reserves held by Asia's 4th largest economy stood at over $346 billion, up nearly $1.5 billion from a month earlier. The central bank attributed the rise to a weak U.S. dollar, which boosted the dollar conversion value of non-dollar assets. The euro strengthened 1.4% against the greenback as of the end of last month, while the British pound gained nearly 1% to the dollar.
The Korean wave has spread across the globe on the back of an exploding popularity of K-pop and dramas. However, challenges remain for the cultural phenomenon in 2014 and beyond as it struggles to maintain its momentum. From games to cartoons, Rapali reports on the future of the Korean wave.
2013 was another huge year for the Korean wave, as Psy's Gentleman attracted over 600 million views online, while Girls' Generation won Video of the Year at the YouTube Music Awards. Despite the sluggish global economy, Korea's content industry is forecast to post $5.1 billion in exports for 2013, up nearly 11% on year. But it wasn't K-pop leading the charge. According to the Korea Creative Content Agency, overseas sales by local game companies accounted for over half of the nation's content exports last year. Animation and character licenses came in second at 9%, followed by music and TV programming. In order for the Korean wave to stay relevant and grow in 2014, experts say the industry will need to diversify. Korean films and musicals are being considered as the next big thing, due to their surging popularity at home and abroad.
K-pop and Korean dramas were central to the start of the Korean wave. Now we expect games, animations, and other next-generation contents to further diversify the Korean wave.
The need for fresh changes comes as global audiences may be feeling fatigued from the army of K-pop idols. A survey by the Korea Foundation for International Culture Exchanges showed that about 60% of international respondents said the Korean wave would begin to lose steam within the next 5 years, while 18% of those polled believe it had already run its course. Critics say the government should do more to promote cultural diversification rather than playing it safe with past successes.
Britain and France are actively supporting creators and cultural content producers in terms of policies or capital. However, the Korean government is not playing a leading role. There is a need for supportive policies that do not interfere.
Korea has a tremendous amount to offer the world, including fashion, food, literature, and so much more. And as the Korean wave evolves with the next generation of fans, it too will embrace other cultures and peoples. Paul Yi, Arirang News.
And here's the latest on the Arctic blast in the U.S. on the heels of a massive snowstorm. Major parts of the country are bracing for a life-threatening cold wave that is forecast to send temperatures plummeting to the lowest in 20 years. Arkanya Lee has more.
After being hit by a blizzard at the start of the new year, people in the Midwest and Northeast United States are now bracing for another blast of dangerous wintry weather. This time, a record-breaking one. The National Weather Service warned Sunday that much of the U.S. will see temperatures that will be the coldest on record in almost 20 years. In a statement, the service said that it may feel as cold as -50 to -60 degrees Fahrenheit, or that's -45 to -51 Celsius on Sunday night over sections of the north central states. Under these conditions, forecasters warn that frostbite can occur on exposed skin within 5 minutes. The freezing cold temperatures are the result of what's called a polar vortex, an Arctic cold front that is set to descend over much of the U.S. By Wednesday, forecasters say nearly half the nation will be shivering in below freezing temperatures. Officials in several states have now asked residents to take extra precautions in the days ahead.
Cold really scares me, and it's such that we will have temperatures that are potentially deadly or certainly life-altering temperatures right now, and we have to be very, very careful with that.
The state of Minnesota ordered all public schools to be closed on Monday ahead of the cold snap, and shoppers in other Midwest states empty shelves at stores to stock up on supplies. The latest winter storm comes after a massive wintry weather system hit the Midwest and Northeast a day after New Year's. The storm killed at least a dozen people, grounded more than 6,000 flights, and forced schools and government offices to close. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
Over the weekend, figure skating queen Kim Yeona blew away the competition at the Korean National Championships.
Stephen Che joins us with the highlights and with more on what lies ahead for Kim at the Sochi Olympics. Hello there.
Hey guys, the Queen of the Ice dazzled Korean fans at home for one last time, winning the Korean Nationals by a landslide. Now she'll focus all of her energy at the upcoming games in Russia. Her latest performance earned her a season-high score of 227.86, just 0.7 of a point below her 2010 Olympic gold medal finish. Kim showed drastic improvements in her routine, nailing difficult jumps and wooing the fans with her sensual ice dance. But although she was dominating, she was not perfect, aborting her last double axel in the long skate. Now with the national crown in the bag, she'll focus on tying up the loose ends in training for the Sochi Games. Now moving on, Marine boy Park Tae-won is headed to Australia to get a start on training for the 2014 Asian Games. His management announced that he'll head to Brisbane on the 11th for an 8-week intensive training session with coach Michael Bull. The goal will be to get back into top swimming shape as he looks ahead to the 17th Asiad opening in mid-September. Meanwhile, 7 teams from the Korean Basketball League have sent scouts over to Reno, California for the NBA Development League's 5-day, 17-game showcase event that tipped off Sunday local time. They're keeping an eye out for talented ballers they could bring over for next season. Now on to baseball news, if you can call it that. MLB.com's blogging site Cut4 has chosen Shin Soo-ji's acrobatic first pitch as the top post of last year. And looking at it again, it's easy to see how it's been so popular across the globe, especially in the U.S. In the majors, the first pitch isn't usually done with much flair, whereas in Korea, it's become the main event of the pre-game proceedings. Now ending off with a tragic story. Portugal football legend Eusebio passed away on Sunday at the age of 71. His longtime team Benfica confirmed that he died of heart failure and invited fans to the Stadium of Light to pay their last respects. Meanwhile, Portugal declared 3 days of national mourning. His legacy was cemented on the pitch, scoring 733 goals in 745 professional matches, going on to be considered one of the greatest footballers in history. Now that does it for me here in the Sports Center. This has been Stephen Che. Check back at midnight for the latest in the world of sports.
And as we reported earlier, those in the U.S. and Canada are dealing with extreme winter weather conditions. But halfway across the globe, we here in Korea have been fortunate enough to have a moderate winter of late.
Right, but the question is, how long will this last? For details, let's go over to our Kim Bo-kyung at the Weather Center. Bo-kyung, what does the weather have in store for us this week?
Good evening, Sean and Ji-hae. Well, we will be lucky enough to have another day or two of the mild winter weather. However, after Wednesday's snow showers, numbers will dip to -9 degrees on Thursday morning. So if you haven't already, you should definitely take out your thick winter jackets. Taking a look at current conditions, the nation is at the edge of a high pressure system from the West Sea, which is why we're seeing clear skies across the nation. Now, here's some unwanted news for those of you with respiratory problems. Fine dust is back and Seoul is currently seeing about twice the normal levels. Other than that, the dry weather warning is still in effect in Jeollanam-do and Gyeongsang-do provinces, so please beware of fires. Taking a look at tomorrow's readings, Seoul starts off the day at -2 degrees with a high of 7. Meanwhile, Daegu and Gwangju hit 9. Moving on to other regions, Jeju makes it to 13 degrees. Meanwhile, Dokdo and Mount Kumgang peak at 9 and -3 degrees, respectively. Well, that's all I have for you this hour, but I'll be back with more updates after midnight.
And that's our broadcast on this Monday night. I'm Yoo Ji-hae in Seoul.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.